welcome back, everybody. I've officially rebranded my YouTube to Big Red Wired. Still same format and everything else. I'm joined by Kyler Cox, who's a sports reporter at the Daily Nebraska student paper. He covers Nebraska wrestling, football, baseball as well. How are you doing, Kyler?
I'm doing good. It's an honor to be on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we look forward to doing some work with Kyler in the near future as well. But Kyler, we're going to start off by talking about Nebraska's transfer portal over this past week. Lots changed ever since they got another quarterback in Anthony Calandria. We'll just start off with, I thought, one of the bigger headlines, and then we'll get in the defensive line. Don't worry about that. But once again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Continue to grow the channel. Over 200 subscribers now as well. If I can get to 1,000, I can monetize this and hopefully do this for a career going forward. And be sure to follow Kyler and myself on Twitter with our handles linked below. And stay tuned later in the show. We got a Justin Fromer of the Hastings Tribune joining us for some Nebraska basketball analysis. But let's start it off with Daniel Kaelin coming back to Nebraska. And if you're a Nebraska fan, you gotta have to feel a lot better about this quarterback room now.
Absolutely, and I think Kalen's one of the more underrated additions to this room. You're paying Calandria reports somewhere around $3 million, right? You're not bringing him in to sit on the bench, but I feel really good about this room with Latif, Kalen, Calandria. I think it could actually be a little bit of a battle, and then in the event of an unfortunate circumstance, there's no drop off. I wouldn't think that's that significant.
Yeah, and you look at Kalen's numbers this season at Virginia Tech. He went, he completed, I believe, around 60% of his passes, but he threw for over 300, nearly 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception in the playing time he had. And against Wake Forest, I believe, was a team where you got a lot of work. He actually had a 54-yard touchdown run as well. So you really like to see that, being that Kaelin was kind of coming out of high school as a passer, but he still has that dual threat ability you're wanting in Nebraska's quarterbacks going forward.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that fits the offense very well. Dana Holgerson type guy. You know, you saw those style of quarterbacks at West Virginia and at Houston. And he's a gamer, man. I think he wants the ball in his hands and he rallies the troops, and that's what you can see on film. And I think it's a pretty good pickup for Nebraska in what's going to be a hard schedule next year.
It's going to be tough for him to win that starting job. But the outlook on the future of Nebraska's quarterbacks, Trey Taylor's coming. It sounds like there's a 2026 quarterback from Nevada they may be adding as well. But you can see a world where Daniel Kaelin could be Nebraska's starting quarterback, if not this year, maybe in 2027. You never know how this thing goes. It's college football. Nowadays, it's a revolving door, but who knows?
Yeah, the revolving door of college football, it's always tough to put an outlook on that, but you have to think he comes back knowing that there's going to be some sort of competition, and he has to feel good about that, I'm sure.
Next news I have for you is Dylan Raiola finds his landing spot. We're going to touch on more of Nebraska's portal commitments, but this happened. We're recording this on Monday midday, and Dylan Raiola is officially an Oregon Duck. What is just your thoughts on this and the whole end of the Nebraska marriage? Everybody's moved on.
I actually think that it's a pretty good pickup for Oregon if he can continue to develop. But you have to wonder how he fits Oregon's offense, because when's the last time they had a quarterback that was, quote unquote immobile, right? Like,
well, even Herbert, even Herbert could run. So
right, yeah, like the Joey Harrington days way back when. I mean, it's an interesting situation, and I'm not saying Dante Moore is an absolute a dual threat guy, right? He doesn't just take off and run, but he can move around the pocket. I do think if he can continue to develop and kind of have a Bo Nix type turnaround, that it'd be very good for both his career and both in Oregon in a couple of years.
I think with Dylan, the whole thing is now it's crazy to think that there's talk of Dylan Raiola now potentially redshirting after 2 years of starting experience, a former 5-star recruit. It's wild to think about, in my opinion. And his brother Dayton, you'd assume, would probably follow him preferred walk-on maybe or something, but it's just another example of a Nebraska legacy player or coach just not working out. But I do wish him nothing but the best of luck going forward. But let's talk about some of these Nebraska transfer portal additions throughout. I'll start at we'll start with we'll start with, if I can get it added to the stage. So there we go. So Daniel Kalen, of course, we were touching on him. Nebraska adds Jack Wills, and long snapper from Michigan State, who played it all season this year. So with Kevin Galick moving on, I don't think any Nebraskan is going to take the long snapping position lightly anymore.
Not after 2 years ago, no. I think it's a good pickup and something that they certainly need. And I think Eckler does a good job all around in that area. So
one thing that I found that's pretty fascinating, and this Wills, I will say he was an all-conference high school tight end. You look at his size, he's over 6'2", 217 pounds. So he could be an emergency tight end if you ever need it as well. So that's nice to add. But these defensive backs Nebraska added. Jason Shiggs from Townsend, he had over 70 tackles this year. Nebraska really attacked the defensive backfield in the portal already. And then Victor Evans as well, FIU transfer. That's a true corner. Shiggs is probably more of a safety. But you have to like those two paired with, Dwayne McDougal from San Diego State, who was a starter under Rob Arch. So when you look at that for Nebraska, I noticed they're kind of shifting away. You see Malcolm Hartzog goes to Arizona. These undersized guys are kind of, Nebraska's going more towards that Nick Saban model. It almost feels like you got to be over 6 foot and be pushing that 180 plus range to play in the defensive backfield.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think McDougal's my favorite addition out of the three. I think he's just a ball hawk, 4 interceptions last year. I think he pairs pretty well with Rex Guthrie, quarterbacking the defense, especially losing Singleton and Buford after this year. So overall in the secondary, I think they did a good job replacing guys like Sierra Wright and Singleton.
This brings me up to our next topic on the transfer portal. We're going to talk some linebackers. Nebraska hammered linebacker. And Greg Smith of Rivals reported today that he has signed, I guess, an extension or a new contract to remain in Lincoln for Vincent Shavers. And he's got Owen Chambliss, Dexter Foster from Oregon State, and then Will Hawthorne from Iowa State. Now, Hawthorne was a freshman this year, redshirted, but dude has elite track speed. From high school, got that size. Just sounds like a linebacker name, but you have to like the size of Dexter Foster, and then of course Owen Chambliss as well. And Owen Chambliss being a proven producer for San Diego State this year.
Yeah, I think Chambliss paired with Shavers is going to shape at that linebacker core very nicely. And something that was kind of lost in the wave of recent days, I believe Willis McGahee withdrew his name from the transfer portal, and I think he fits in nice along the edge too. Just continue developing after his redshirt year this season.
And that's, yeah, I totally agree. Willis removed himself from the transfer portal on Sunday. And I'm wondering, are they going to try to put him in the second level of the defense, or are they going to try to bulk him up a little more? He's right now listed around 240 pounds. Would you try to add some more size and potentially make him into a true defensive end?
I think it's definitely an interesting proposition, and he has a lot of explosiveness on the edge. So I think that that's something that could bode well for him if he continues to develop physically.
Next up, Nebraska's first actual defensive line addition they added was, I believe it came out on either Friday or Thursday, was Anthony Jones. He's kind of hopped around college football. I believe he's been at Oregon, Indiana, UCLA, and there was one other Big Ten school that he had to stop.
Michigan State, I believe.
Yeah, Michigan State. And he only had a sack and a half this year, but you do got to like that size. And I think he's more, I use the comparison of MJ Sherman, kind of a guy that can play on the edge, not going to really get in the backfield per se so often, but a guy that can plug that C gap.
Yeah, and I think you have to be careful box score watching the defensive tackle position. That's kind of a position where stats don't tell the whole story a lot of the time. It came in today that they signed Jasir Whittington after a little bit of controversy this morning. I think that's a good addition as well. Just with his rank out of high school as one of the top recruits out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Whittington, you have to like. Now, Jones is more of an edge, I'd assume. Now, Whittington, though, I think he fits more so on the interior. Had 12 tackles, 1 sack this year as a redshirt freshman for Pitt. And like you said, he was one of the highest ranked recruits out of his class, and definitely a guy Nebraska spent a lot about in the transfer portal as well. So that's a guy you could definitely see in the rotation playing for the Black Shirts this year. But the next guy we got to talk about, who I really like, is Andy Berberija, or how do you ever you say his name? I think it's Berberija or Berberia. I think it's Berberia. But the dude was first team All-American at Iowa Western Community College this year, had 12 sacks. Actually, I believe it was 11 listed on the Athletics website, but I've seen 11 or 12, 45 tackles as well. But you're getting a first team All-American from the JUCO ranks and already listed out 295 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa Western's a pipeline for all sorts of sports. I think it's a great pickup. And I think it's one thing you've seen from the fan base, right, is the clamoring for why can't we talent FCS talent like Indiana did, right? A lot of James Madison transfers, and you've seen how that's correlated to success. So I do like the route Nebraska's taking here, trying to just acquire some proven game changers on that defensive line.
And the last portal guy that I want to touch on, Quasi Gilmer, UCLA's leading wide receiver, had actually quite the touchdown reception against the Huskers in 2024 when UCLA came into town and thumped Nebraska. But looking at the Huskers going forward, now you got a dang key replacement right away.
I like Gilmer a lot. I also look for somebody like Cortez Mills to take a step up. Somebody you haven't really heard about a lot that's been kind of surprising is Jeremiah Jones. They got him to flip late when he was almost about to sign with Missouri a couple years ago. Didn't really play this year. Quinn Clark fills in opposite Messiah Hunter whenever you need him to. I think it's a strong position group for sure.
And you also, you mentioned the youth there, but I think Nebraska is expected to maybe add a couple more transfers. You're wondering about running back. I think everybody's wondering, is Nebraska really going to try to go into this season without a running back? We've talked about Mekhi Nelson having that impressive bowl game showing, but I just don't feel confident to have him and Mosey and then maybe rely on Quentin Ives or a true freshman and Jamal Rule, who I am high on, but I think you got to get a big, powerful back for the Big Ten.
I agree, and the injury becomes a concern because you can't go into the season with Mosey and Nelson and then have one of them go down, right? A lot of unproven between the two, and then even more behind them. I mean, is there a chance that their guy isn't in the portal yet? I don't know.
That's we could speculate. We're talking about Shamar Brown. At least that's who I'm thinking when you say that.
That's who I'm thinking about.
That Miami running back. They've relied on him in the playoff, but he ain't the future back. Maybe he wants to come home. And this is all speculation. They played against each other in high school, but Daniel Kalen yesterday on his Instagram reposted a post of Shamar Brown from Miami. So, you could see that connection. And I don't want to start spreading gossip or rumors because how social media is. A lot of things can mean nothing, but there is that connection there. So maybe Nebraska does pursue somebody like that. Maybe that's why they haven't, because if Nebraska could add Shamar Brown, you have to be really excited going forward about this new look offense that they're going to have this year.
Absolutely. Nebraska guy, almost had him last year. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out after the national championship.
Next topic we got to talk about is Nebraska appears to finally have its defensive line coach hired, Corey Brown, out of Miami, Ohio. He's been at Miami of Ohio twice, spent a little stint in between at Rutgers as well. But kind of an under-the-radar name, has a connection to Rob Arich. He worked with him for a year at South Dakota. But he's proven his defensive lines year after year average around 30 sacks per season. Nebraska had 11 this year.
Yeah, I think with the time frame that they made the signing, it was a good signing. I'm not going to say it doesn't cause concern because it took you until mid-January to get your guy who hasn't been coaching since the end of December, right? So the way that it looks is it's like, did we strike out with a couple other candidates? I don't know, but with what they had, I do think it was a good move to get proven production at that position.
And he's going to coach more on the interior. They have Roy Manning, who Rich brought it over from San Diego State to coach the defensive ends or edges, as you call. But it's kind of one of those things where you're just going to have to wait and see. The same thing with Terry Braden. I mean, they brought him in, and that did not really bode well for the Huskers. But any last remarks before we head into our next segment, Kyler?
No, I think we covered a lot of it, and it was good.
All right, we'll be back to talk some Nebraska wrestling. You're listening here to the Big Red Wire. Nebraska wrestling 8-3 on the season. Started off conference play with a dominant 36-3 win over Purdue. Obviously, there's been some drama surrounding Nebraska wrestling as well. We are going to touch on that. Don't worry. But Kyler, what was just your takeaway from the Huskers? Not only opening up against Purdue, but they also thumped Northern Iowa as well. So you kind of feel like they almost got a sense of a wake-up call after Oklahoma State came in the Lincoln and took them down.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway, at least for me, is Brock Hardy. He struggled. There was a stretch that he fell to Mendez. He fell to Oklahoma State a couple times. For him to be able to get back out there in Big Ten play and then not only get a pin, he was up 15-2 when he got the pin. I mean, he absolutely dominated the match. Another person, Alan Kaler, that's been a spot that's been very concerning for Mark Manning. Pretty much just a gaping hole in the lineup the first half of the season, basically the whole season. And then the last two matches for him, he lost against Northern Iowa, but he's been competitive and he looked really good against Purdue.
Yeah, I agree. At 125, the past two bouts he's had, I know he came out short against Northern Iowa, but you've seen that kind of effort that Manning was almost per se calling for at that at that slot. And then, although he was facing a guy that was under 500, Kaler got Nebraska the 9-3 decision win, and that's huge. I think when you're at that 125 to set the tone when you're starting off there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's spots in the lineup that you can cover up, but 125 is one of the harder spots, especially when you're at home and trying to start the bout off right.
One guy that I've really been impressed with since the start of the year is the transfer from Cal Poly, Chance Lamer. Had over 3 minutes of riding time in his match on last Friday. He's starting to get in the groove. Manning even had that joke after the Northern Iowa meet. He's like, yeah, against Oklahoma State, his feet were sunk into the mat. Now he's finally moving his feet. But that's what's exciting for if you're a Nebraska wrestling fan is what you have now at 149 is you're going from NCAA runner-up Brock Hardy to Chance Lamer to your national champion Antrell Taylor, and then you have LJ Arujo, who is just impressive as hell, although he's lost some heartbreakers the past 3 bouts. And then you have Minnow, Allred, McDaniel, and then, well, who knows at heavyweight right now, but you have to feel very encouraged about the Huskers right now.
For sure. I think Lamer is the type of guy that can come in and take this team from a pretender to a true contender for the national title. Obviously, you have Penn State at the top. That's going to be hard to overcome. But he changes the entire outlook of the team, in which all due respect to guys like Scott Robertson, McCade Zinkin, they fought. They didn't perform poorly by any means, but a guy like Chance Lamer, he just changes the outlook of the team.
All right. Now to our next topic, AJ Ferrari. Now, by now you guys should have already heard the news, but if not, AJ Ferrari was actually arrested Friday night after his return to the mat, where he was out the past two duels due to a turf toe injury. He was pulled over for speeding, but he had a warrant out for his arrest in Texas. That's all we're really going to talk about with that. But obviously, AJ's had a troubled past with instances as well. So now it's just kind of, what do you do at heavyweight? Is Ferrari going to be able to return? Who knows? That's something we're going to have to watch going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't think so against Minnesota this week. I think you're going to see Cade Ziola against number 10, Coy Hopke. And that's going to be a really good test for him. He's shown that he can be the next guy up in bouts that he's battled in, and he's been pretty successful. But yeah, that's definitely going to change the outlook of the season, especially if they can't end up getting Ferrari back.
And well, the thing with that Ziola though, he was runner up at the Soldier Salute as well. So you're impressed with the true freshman from Omaha, but obviously, if Nebraska really wants to make a run at these teams like Iowa and Ohio State that are coming to Lincoln here in a few weeks, and Minnesota's going to be a tough matchup. They're number 7 in the nation as well. You want to be able to get Ferrari back, but it's kind of out of Nebraska's hands at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for Ziola to grow, but obviously in an ideal situation, you're not wanting to throw him into the fire, especially right now, right? Minnesota, Iowa, Ohio State. I mean, you're in a gauntlet. It's not an ideal situation.
Yeah, and the whole irony, you and I, we got him at the podium, and then this all happens. You hope for the best for his sake, and you hope for the best for the team's sake going forward. But I don't think that if, let's say, if Ferrari wrestles and never, if he doesn't wrestle for Nebraska again, I still think you have to be encouraged for Nebraska sitting because you have that Ziola. He's just going to have to really mature fastly, and you are confident now. Especially with like Antrell Taylor, I think he kind of has been wrestling with more of a chip on his shoulder after the national duels. You've seen that offensive fire from him.
Yeah, Antrell, whether it was some injuries or he didn't feel 100%, he's come out ever since that, and he's competed like the national champion that he is. I think there's a lot of optimism around this team considering the youth that they have. I mean, a lot of youth up and down the lineup, and it's, I mean, as we've seen, one of the best in the Big Ten.
Well, guys, stay tuned for more wrestling coverage. We look to have Kyler on more and more throughout the rest of Nebraska's wrestling season to dive on them as well. But next segment up, we're going to be joined by Justin Fromer to talk some Big Red basketball. And welcome back to our next segment. We are joined by Justin Fromer of the Hastings Tribune, who covers Nebraska basketball and everything else Nebraska athletics. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Justin B. Fromer as well, right there. But Justin, you went to Ohio State, you went to Indiana, and now Nebraska's 16-0. What can you just tell us about the Big Red and the successes they're having this year?
Yeah, I mean, no one has expected what has played out in these first couple months of the season for Nebraska now be up to number 8 in the AP poll, which is tied for their highest ranking in program history, and now heading into a soft spot in their schedule where if they take care of business against Oregon on Tuesday, Northwestern over the weekend, and then a home game against Washington and a road game at Minnesota next week, they could be 20-0 heading into a road game at Michigan in a couple of weeks and legitimate Big Ten contenders. But I mean, this team has played out, I guess, exactly how Fred Hoiberg expected, with their veteranship and their age and their experience and their knowing the system and bringing in guys who understood what Fred Hoiberg wanted and what Nate Lenzer, the defensive wizard on the staff, wanted, and it's all come together to put into this 16-0 start.
For you, Kyler, looking on the outside, I know you cover wrestling right now, but what has just been your takeaway from Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed with the contributions they've gotten from Braden Frager, and that's actually something I think that's more important than a lot of people see right now, because earlier on in the season when Hoiberg would take Mast and Sanford off the floor, having to rely on Jamarcus, who really hasn't gone off until this last game against Indiana, a guy like Frager to provide some scoring off the bench, especially, I mean, Nebraska this year, they're outside the top 200 in bench points per game. And you have guys like Kale that can come in and provide a defensive spark and a guy that knows the offense and stuff. But when you just have a sniper and somebody that wants the shot, like Frager, that can come in and provide that spark, that's been really impressive to me.
For you, Justin, when you look at the schedule down the stretch, I know Nebraska hosts Oregon on Tuesday night. Who's a sleeper game that you think Nebraska needs to not overlook?
I think it's got to be the road game at Minnesota, which if you talk about teams that no one expected to be good in the Big Ten, that's probably number one on the list right now. They're another team that's old and got experience, and a new coach in Nico Medved that's knows what he's doing. And the barn is Williams Arena is just a real tough place to play. And that game coming 2 days before that game against Michigan, that's one of those look ahead spots that if Nebraska's not careful, they could get caught.
Now, am I jumping the train too much? I said after the Illinois game, I said Nebraska has the team to win the Big Ten. Am I crazy to still think that? I know Michigan, they just lost. Like, as of right now, I think Nebraska can beat anybody in the country.
Absolutely. If you win road games, multiple road games in the Big Ten, 3 straight road games in the Big Ten, like Nebraska has at Illinois, at Indiana, at Ohio State, all 3 of them second half comebacks, and you've beaten Michigan State on your home floor, you're 100% a Big Ten title contender.
Justin got a little bit of a
my dog. I apologize.
What's kind of the plan with Oogie? I know he was out on Saturday against Indiana, but is that somebody that they're going to try to keep working back in, or at this stage in the season, where do you kind of see it going?
So what Fred Hoiberg has said these past couple of games is that he's just going to be questionable the rest of the year, and these back injuries are just tough things where one day you could be feeling great and then you sleep wrong and then you're back to square one. So it's when you hear a coach say day to day, this is like a legit day to day thing with Oogie, and his back is feeling good enough. They're going to try to get him to play because he's important to the rotation and to getting some minutes off of rink mass legs here and there throughout the course of the season. And we saw in his one action so far this season, he can shoot the outside shot, provided 7 points in that game against New Hampshire. So if they can get him on the floor, they're going to try to, but that's a big if at this point.
Well, looking at the Oregon game right now, it looks like they got the big guy and Nate Biddle, and that's essentially it. I know Dana Altman's kind of having a down year, being 8-8. But is there anything else that Nebraska should be concerned about, considering its classes just began again and everything's starting back, getting in the swing?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just about focusing on the team in front of you and staying consistent. It's actually something that I wrote about today from the press conference, is that Nebraska really hasn't played a complete 40-minute game in maybe a month, maybe since that 2-game stretch against Creighton and Wisconsin. They've had games where they'll have a really bad first half and then explode in the second half, or they'll have stretches where they fall apart here and there throughout the game. Obviously, we saw what happened in these 2 games last week where they had a 8-minute stretch against Ohio State in the second half where they couldn't buy a bucket, and Ohio State took the lead and they had to come back. And then Indiana, they fell apart at the end of the first half, and the Hoosiers took that 16-point lead early in the second half, and they had to storm back to win that game. So I think they're still looking for more consistency on the glass, and just overall doing what they can to play complete 40-minute games.
Yeah,
for Kyler,
I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can jump in. Something that concerns me about that is Oregon's front court. I mean, they're the top offensive rebounding team in the Big Ten this year. Nebraska, they do crash the boards on the defensive end, but you get rank out of the rotation and stuff, and that can be an issue. Looking forward to tomorrow.
For both of you two, if you guys had to pick the most impactful transfer for Nebraska, or maybe the underrated type of guy this year, I'm almost leaning towards Jared Garcia and what he's been able to do defensively, and he could come provide a spark off the bench as well, shooting. Who else do you guys consider to be that guy?
I think the top transfer so far for me for Nebraska has been Jamarcus Lawrence, just because, again, Nebraska had really poor point guard play last year with Aaron Eulis. And excuse me, I'm sorry. Give me 2 seconds.
Go on ahead, Kyler.
Yeah, I actually would agree with Jamarcus Lawrence. He's an absolute game changer, two-way guard that can just provide the stability from the point guard position. And Bryce Sanford gets a lot of the love, right? I mean, he shoots it well from deep. He's had those big scoring spurts in the first half of games. But, I mean, Jamarcus Lawrence was the reason they won at Indiana, and I think that he's been the most impactful person on this team so far.
I think the most impressive thing with Nebraska this year is the fact that they have so many different guys that can just go off in a game. I mean, we've seen Rink do it. We've seen Sanford. We've seen Hoiberg. I'm blanking, right? Oh, Lawrence having the career high at Indiana as well. So I think you got to really like where Nebraska's sitting at. It looks like we lost. Oh, Justin is back. We got his connection back. But is there anything else you want to touch us on before we close out this segment, Justin?
No, I don't think so. I was just adding I was trying to add with the Jamarcus stuff, that just the fact that, again, he was here the first 2 years. He knows exactly what Fred Hoiberg wants in terms of pace and what it should look like in the half court, and when to push it, when to hold back. And just now the fact that he left and came back and was sort of able to do it on his own terms for a year at Rhode Island has grown himself into a more mature leader for the team, for the program.
Well, Justin, we appreciate you giving us some nice basketball analysis. Once again, guys, be sure to check out his work at the Hastings Tribune. He covers all Nebraska sports, portal, anything you name it. Justin has it, and follow him at Twitter as well. So for Justin Fromer, we appreciate you hopping on. And welcome back, guys. Quick hit odds and ends section, talking about the college football playoff, the Indiana Hoosiers versus the Miami Hurricanes. Who would have thought Indiana would be in a national championship in our lifetime? I sure as hell didn't, but they are. Kicked the living hell out of Oregon the second time around. Alabama in the quarterfinals as well. It's incredible.
I mean, it's unheralded. Who would have thought? Nebraska basketball 16-0, and Indiana football has the opportunity to go ahead and win a national championship. It's really one of the more impressive things in college football history.
Selfishly, I wanted Ole Miss to beat Miami because of just they lost the head coach, Trinidad Chambliss, a Division II quarterback last year, led his team to the semifinal, one of the better quarterbacks in college football this season as well. But Miami's offensive line versus Indiana's defensive line and vice versa, that's going to be smash mouth football.
For sure. And I don't know about you, but I'm a true believer in this Indiana team. When I watch them, and it's not about the style of play or the talent, but they just there's something about their energy and their attitude that just reminds me of 2019 LSU, in which they're going to win whenever they take the field. And I really don't expect that to be much different.
Well, and as Kirk Cignetti says, he kicks the shit out of everybody. I ain't betting against him ever again. I did it after they beat Alabama. I said, Indiana will beat Oregon. And I'm not, who knows how this can go. Miami is a very good football team at all three levels on both sides of the ball, but I think the Hoosiers are going to pull it off. But guys, we appreciate you listening. Be once again sure to follow Kyler Cox on Twitter at Dugout Cox, myself at bschneider33. Like, comment, subscribe. If you guys decide you want to sponsor the channel, shoot me a message, or you can email me at schneiderbobby03@gmail.com. For Bobby Schneider and Kyler Cox, signing out.